Welcome to Glass Half Full with Leslie Krongold. She shares her stories, experiences, and knowledge of living and coping with a chronic health condition. Learn about tools and resources and hear inspirational interviews that help you to live a life filled with quality and dignity. With 2 decades of support group leadership, Leslie's ready to help you make lemonade out of life's lemons. Are you ready?
Welcome to the Glass Half Full. It's our first episode for 2021. I took a little break, no vacation, just working on social media, the website, search engine optimization, so many things behind the scenes. But we're back. This episode is all about how we're represented in popular media, on television, in movies, print, and social media. Whether we have a chronic illness, a disease, and/or disability, are we seeing ourselves reflected in popular media? I know I'm not. I think I can safely say I've never seen a character with myotonic dystrophy on a TV show or in a movie. Well, there is a documentary. It's called Extremis, and it's about a palliative care doctor, and one of her dying patients has myotonic dystrophy. It was incredibly painful to watch. And several years ago, there was a TV medical drama called Royal Pains. I didn't watch this series, but I saw Facebook posts from people in my patient community that there was an episode that mentioned myotonic dystrophy. So I made sure I found that episode. I watched it only to be let down. Myotonic dystrophy was mentioned as a possible diagnosis for a patient. I don't even think you saw the patient, but it was quickly discounted. So you could sneeze and miss the whole thing. So I got to thinking about the power of media representation. Over the last few months, I've interviewed a few people with different health conditions or disabilities, to hear if they felt represented in popular media. The first person you'll hear from is Christophe Zajac-Denek. That's a hyphenated last name, not just multisyllabic. I met Christophe at a virtual podcast conference. He's originally from Detroit, but because of his avid interest in surfing, skateboarding, and punk rock, he made his way to Southern California. Christophe identifies as a little person and has a podcast called I'm Really a Big Deal. He shared with me that there are between 200 and 250 different types of dwarfism, and people exhibit different symptoms depending on which type of dwarfism they have. The condition that Christophe has is called cartilage hair hypoplasia. In your lifetime, how have you seen the media change in the representation of little people? And when did the term little people become, I'm assuming it's acceptable?
Yeah.
Are people that you met in your community, do any people resent that term, or is it a term that came out of your community?
Sure. Yeah, those are really important questions. The term, I'll start with the term little person. The term little person is acceptable. You could also say dwarf. However, when I've posed this to guests on my show, some of them have strong feelings in a way that that doesn't define them. And so they don't want to be called a little person or a dwarf. They just want to be called by their name. And just like we all do, your condition does not define who you are. So in that same breath, that's the same with us. Little person is it's fine. It's PC. So is dwarf. Midget, or the M word as people refer to it, is not okay. But words are just words in a sense. And if somebody actually wants to come up and have a conversation with me and say, if they were to call me a midget or something like that, and I wanted to, if I saw value in the conversation, or where this was somebody that was just maybe misdirected or something like that, and even if they're not, it's still okay to say, hey, that's offensive, and that's not all right to call somebody out like that. My name is Christophe. In fact, another guest on my show does that, and he is incredibly brave. Whether they call him out as an offensive term or not, he will go up to people and say, hey, the proper terminology is this, but also my name is Joseph, and it's nice to meet you. And I was born this way. And he interacts with kids on this level. And I never would be, I've never been able to do that before, maybe this past year or two, because, it's still accepting yourself. And all of my friends that I've shown that to as well, they're like, that's so cool. I don't know that I got the balls to do that. Like, just to, go up to a mother and a child, and to confront the situation. And because with each situation that passes, if it's not rectified, or if there isn't some sort of positive interaction or a teaching moment or something like that, that's a moment that's lost. And that's another moment that goes by where it's okay to maintain confusion about how to interact with us or other people with disability, And to me, the whole reason why we have that is because the media doesn't include us. I've worked I've worked in Hollywood for 11 years, and you've seen my face once, maybe twice, and it's not because I haven't worked. It's because Hollywood covers me up for everything. My face is covered in prosthetics or makeup or just costumes and masks and crazy wardrobe and things like that. And trust me, I want to do that stuff because it's fun and I can do that stuff and I need the work. So please pay me. But also, you just complimented me on my face, and I'm not searching for compliments, but I'm not this disgustingly grotesque object that can be seen in a commercial or and I'm not saying myself, I'm saying all of us, everyone that meets my friends with dwarfism think that they're incredible. They're like, your friend is so cool. How they're so awesome. I never, knew another little person before them, or, before you or whatever. And it's the personality that shines through, right? And that becomes inaccessible when little people are hired as props or just warm bodies to move around a costume or some foam or something like that. And so that's how I see how society sees us, and it's taken me a long time to figure that out, because remember how I said I would get paid, 10 to 100 times as much, in a costume as I would get playing music. Well, there's the hook right there,
Right.
money. But then once you start to think about it and you're thinking, okay, well, I'm not getting any equity on my face or my skill because I'm in a costume. They could have hired anybody, and there's just a list. And if whoever said the first yes is going to get the job. So it doesn't matter, what I look like in that regard. And I think that that's sad. And I do think some stuff in Hollywood is turning around for the better with that. I mean, Peter Dinklage is blazing a trail, and he's awesome. And I'm really proud of him and what he's done. And The Station Agent, I love that you mentioned that film. That film is incredible. That when I first saw that, I was thinking, who knew about me? This is crazy. It's actually, I identified with that so much. And just more of that is what I think we need. And, even when there are certain things that in my eyes, are exploitative. I still see, there's a part of me that still sees value in, like the little women of LA and Dallas and New York and stuff. I mean, it's a reality show, so there's going to be ridiculous drama and things going on, but still you get to see little people. It's not, I don't see that as steps backwards. I see it as steps forward, even though it's this fantastic thing and it's reality TV and stuff like that. I respect that there's a show that shows us, and because you have to work on opening the door somehow. And I think that, what Tara created is important and it's good, and it's gotten attention of a lot of people.
The next person I spoke with is Lindsey Kizer in North Carolina. Lindsey appeared in an earlier podcast episode about coping with COVID. She was diagnosed over a year ago with narcolepsy. What do you think the biggest misconception people have about narcolepsy? Whether it's friends or family members, just in general.
I think, most people think it is like what you see on TV, where someone can be, mid-sentence or, doing whatever normal activities and they just in an instant fall asleep out of nowhere. And that's not how it happens at all. I don't really know where that has come from, because even that's not even something recent as far as the past few years. That's been over time, and it's, being diagnosed, I really saw how people really believe that. Coworkers, not really friends, because they had kind of seen some of the progression up to my diagnosis, but I'd even say acquaintances and even, new coworkers and people that had met me after. When I say I have narcolepsy, I get the question either, what is that? Or, wait, so you're just going to fall asleep while you're talking to me? That question would make me cringe so bad for so long.
How does popular media, TV, television, books, and, I guess social media too, how do they portray narcolepsy?
I mean, for most people, it's a joke. One of the first movies that anyone ever mentions is always Deuce Bigelow. And he goes on the date with the girl, and she just, middle of dinner, after he drops her off at the house, she's fallen asleep out of nowhere. And that really is the image for a lot of people, that, I'm going to be talking to them or sitting at dinner, and I'm just going to fall asleep. My face will be in my food. I'll fall and hit my head, something like that. And a lot of them, after they, spend time with me, they do realize that that's not true. Or some of the ones that, had that perception and had no idea I had narcolepsy, that does change. Social media, I do think, is starting to do a really good job, especially thanks to some of the organizations at trying to correct that narrative, because there are a lot of people that are very outspoken about that not being the truth on social media. And I do think that's starting to, but that's definitely a big mountain to climb, because it has been something that's, been drilled into people's heads for many years, thanks to movies, TV shows, and who knows where this idea came from.
Well, I never saw Deuce Bigelow, but I did see Rumblefish. Did you see that? Okay, I have to interrupt for a moment now. I've since realized it was not Rumblefish I saw. I mean, I did see that movie, and it's by the same director, Gus Van Sant, but it's his other movie, My Own Private Idaho, from 1991, which features the actor River Phoenix as a character with narcolepsy. It's older than Deuce Bigelow, so maybe that's why you haven't seen it.
Okay.
And that was the first time. I think it was River Phoenix who was in it. Do you know who he is?
I have heard the name. I cannot think of that face off the top of my head right now.
Well, he's since deceased, but he is or was Joaquin Phoenix's brother. I guess his older brother. And he was in a movie, Gus Van Sant? I think that's the filmmaker. And it was kind of an art house movie. So it's very attractive, the visuals, but River Phoenix's character did have narcolepsy. And for me, that was the first time I ever heard of the condition. And I was probably in high school or college. So it could be like 30 years old, the movie. So maybe, but it was a drama. And so it wasn't, it would be interesting for you to see it and then tell me what your take on the portrayal is, because I'm sure it was a bit more empathetic than a, comedy, like somebody falling, their head in the soup or something.
I definitely will have to check it out because I have not seen it come up. Most of the TV and movie portrayals of it, it is more of, a comedy show or movie. So that definitely would be interesting to see, if it does have more of an accurate portrayal, for sure.
Back in October of 2019, oh so long ago when we traveled freely, I won a trip to Las Vegas to attend the health conference. I won it from We Go Health. It was a huge conference, and it's hard to imagine being in a crowd like that now, but I got to meet other patient leaders from all over the country, and one of those patient leaders is John Poehler. John lives in Fort Collins, Colorado, and he wrote a book which was published in 2020. It's called This War Within My Mind, based on the blog The Bipolar Battle. I think it was right before Christmas that I talked with John via Zoom, and we were both well bundled for the cold. Anyhow, John really stood out for me at the conference. He's very warm and friendly, so I had looked forward to including him in this podcast. So you were diagnosed in 99, right?
Right, yeah.
So in the 21 years, how have you experienced people's reaction and understanding to bipolar condition? When you talk to people, do you feel like people are more understanding now than when you first were diagnosed?
Oh, definitely beyond the shadow of a doubt. Because when I was first diagnosed, I know a lot of people, when they are diagnosed, they deny it at first. They're like, oh my gosh, why me? I was actually really excited about it because I'd been searching for answers for a few years. And so to finally have a doctor say, John, this is what you have, and it matches up completely. And not only do you have this, but we can manage it. It's not like a death sentence or anything. We just need to find the right treatment for you. And so I shared it with a lot of my friends, my family, and so forth. But I found out real quick that, especially back then, there was a huge stigma. I lost a ton of friends. And I had a lot of bad experiences with broken friendships, relationships because of my illness. And actually, I haven't really been open about it until I started my blog at the beginning of 2017. And that's when I just decided I'm going to tell everybody, it doesn't matter to me anymore. And I actually had a good response. And that's why, when we met last year in Las Vegas, getting that award on Twitter, that was really showed me, wow, people are starting to understand more. And, there wasn't a We Go Health back when I was diagnosed. There weren't any of these huge organizations that you see now. And so it's definitely a lot less, I feel a lot less stigma compared to the way it was back then. I don't necessarily think like in, mainstream media, I don't feel like it's portrayed as accurately as it could, but I mean, it's better than it was back then.
How has the media, popular media, whether television, books, movies, celebrities, coming out, how
Yeah.
has it changed over the years?
From my perspective, just from what I've experienced, when I was first diagnosed, I tried to watch a bunch of the movies that, portrayed characters that had bipolar disorder, and I couldn't relate to any of them at all. It just seemed like they were more stereotypes of what someone with bipolar disorder lives with. And the past few years, I've seen a bunch of new movies come out, and they're getting closer. But in terms of portraying us as a character on TV, I haven't really been too excited with what I've seen. There's one movie I've seen that the director, he has bipolar disorder and he acts in it. And it's an independent film. And I saw it last year. I previewed it, and that's probably the closest that I could relate to, because it was from his story. It was based on his life, and I totally could relate to that. So it's come a long ways, that's for sure. In terms of like actors, actresses, people on the, that you hear, who are some examples?
Kanye West.
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah, that yeah, that's Kanye West. I know he has bipolar disorder, and it's I feel bad for him because you can see that he's suffering, and I have no idea. Obviously, we don't have any idea about personally what's going on with him, but seeing his outbursts and stuff, I mean, I can relate to some of how he's acted. So in terms of the reality of what like untreated bipolar disorder looks like, I think that, that he's an example of that. But there's others too. There's a gentleman on General Hospital, Maurice something. I wish I don't remember the names too well, but I've heard him speak, and I've read articles in Bipolar, the BP Hope, and he is great. Like, he speaks out, and I really like what he does.
So
and then,
the actor has bipolar, but not the character. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he actually has, and I think they put it in the script. I'm not sure, but in terms of him and talking about it, for me, it's awesome to see someone in a light like that has, so many followers, so many people, that he's in the spotlight, and he feels so comfortable just talking about mental health, bipolar disorder. I think that's a lot different than way back when. But then, of course, we can't leave out Carrie Fisher. I mean, she's been, spokeswoman since the very beginning. So, and she's been always just so cool. So.
Yeah, no, I always forget that she did come out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think the most, just in terms of a character, the main one I think about is from Homeland, Claire Danes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was that, you know how different communities, I'm Jewish, and, when something comes out in the media, people always go, is it good for the Jews? Is it bad for the Jews? So I always think that different sort of minority communities do that. Was that portrayal? How did people in the bipolar community, was there talk about her character? And
there was actually, I think she actually spoke with influencer at somebody who has bipolar disorder, and kind of got she was consulted by her, and uh, supposedly she used that for character or whatnot. But a lot of people that I spoke with thought that they didn't portray it as well in the actual script, as her as a character, as an actress. I think she does an awesome job with it, but she's not the one writing the script,
Right.
And I think some of the storyline, it just doesn't really jive and make sense with some things. Like she stopped her medication, and then she got psychotic and manic, and like she took her meds again and she was fine like the next day. And
Oh,
that's completely, it's like these meds don't just kick in like that. And it's like,
right.
oh, a day later, I feel 100%, So, just things like that. So, but I think it's good that they, the consensus from everybody I've talked to is the same. It's nice seeing characters in actual on screen that they're trying to portray bipolar disorder, which is really good.
I haven't met Daniel G. Garza in person, but I've seen him virtually many times. Daniel has been a longtime patient leader, advocate, and educator for HIV/AIDS. He has a very impressive resume. He's a board director for a health center, an ambassador for a number of nonprofit organizations, winner of the Hero of Hope Award for Patient Advocacy from Eye Pain International Foundation, as well as having a number of media outlets, his own podcast, YouTube, Facebook Live. Daniel has a lot going on. So this is just an excerpt from our recent Zoom conversation. You'll hear more from Daniel in a future podcast episode. He represents two patient communities, those with HIV, AIDS, and anal cancer. What are your feelings about how popular media has represented, HIV, AIDS, people with HIV, AIDS, and or people with cancer, and in particular, anal cancer?
I think let's say AIDS. I think AIDS, for a long time, AIDS was just death. People just died. And one of the very first movies that I ever saw about AIDS was a movie called It's My Party with Eric Roberts, Gregory Hines, I think it's Gregory. Anyway, he was on Gonzo. Anyway, Margaret Cho is in it. Olivia Newton-John is in it. There's a lot of great actors in the movie. And it was about how men of that time who were positive and were dying would commit suicide, and
Right.
So that their families could collect the insurance money, but they would make it seem such a natural death so that the families could collect the insurance. And that was one of the first movies. Interesting enough, my mom and I got to see that movie together when I was really sick in Spanish. So after I was diagnosed, her and I, it was on TV in South Texas in Spanish, and she watched it with me, and that changed her view on HIV. I think media, also print, if you open a magazine and you see a medication for HIV and AIDS, they always pick the most beautiful buff guys, and they're out hiking, looking at the sunset, and it's so pretty. But it's not always like that. Medications doesn't always, no. I think we could do a lot better. I think we could do a lot more. I think that we need more Latino, we need more Spanish information out there. Medication is good for your body, but it doesn't always make you feel great. And I hope people can understand that difference. Like, it's good for me. I know my medications are good for me. I know they've made me strong. I have a strong immune system. My T cell count is undetectable. I have great hair. Like, everything's good, but it doesn't always make you feel great. There are complications. Even after all these years of medication, there are days when diarrhea happens or constipations happen or your mood swings. And I think we need to talk to people about that. I think we lost a little bit of the fear that we had for HIV a while back. And people got very like, oh, there's a pill. Like I can no, yes, there is a pill, but this is not a club that I want you to join just because it's not that bad. It is that bad. It is. It affects your mood. It affects your relationships. For some people, it affects your vision of your future. There are still people in 2020 that I know of who have not told their families that they're HIV positive. There are people who hide their medications in aspirin bottles so that their family doesn't know that they have HIV. And so, no, we've moved a lot forward in treatment and in services, but we haven't let people catch up yet. And I think that's where we need that in media. We need that representation out there. Cancer, man, I think anal cancer is the butt of the joke in all this. I think we don't talk about it like we should. And I'm also guilty of it. I as a anal cancer survivor, I should be more aware of what I talk about and how I talk about it and what I say out there. And I don't do it mainly because HIV has always been my main focus. But it's connected, and I should be more of that. And I think, and please, anybody watching or listening, this is not belittling any other cancers, but I think breast cancer has always been up front. Breast cancer has always been like the main cause that a lot of people go to. When you hear cancer, I think a lot of people go to breast cancer, and then everything else falls behind. No pun intended. But I started a Facebook page for ostomy, men with ostomy bags, and there's lack of communication in the group. I haven't figured out how to get people or gentlemen to talk about it. It's very difficult to get the conversations going because cancer affects a whole lot. It doesn't just affect your body; it's body, mind, and soul. My cancer as a gay man has affected my relationship with my partner, not just emotional, but physical. Intimacy, not on his end. It's all me because I put barriers and I set up walls because I haven't had a chance to sit down with to be very specific, with other gay anal cancer survivors and go, how does this affect you with your relationship? How does it affect you sexually? How do you see your body now?
My last guest for this episode is Anya Flatow, who you may remember from the last podcast episode about dance. Anya lives in Southern California, is an avid dancer, and was born with spina bifida. Have you seen, growing up or now as an adult, any images of people with spina bifida that, had an impact on you, positive or negative?
Oof. Not really. Like I mentioned, like in the spinal disability, spinal cord injury world, growing up, I saw a lot of images and like there's even a show on TV called Push Girls.
Oh yeah.
Like all of the representation I saw growing up was people with spinal cord injuries. And I grew up thinking that it was because people who are in the mainstream society kind of look at spinal cord injuries as, like, for lack of a better term, sexier than spina bifida. So like their stories, like they relate more to the stories of people who've gone through trauma than they do, somebody who's going to talk to you about like a neural tube defect, and I was born with blah 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 blah. that's how I grew up thinking. And I never really saw a lot of images of like influencers with spina bifida, and that's why I feel like it's so important for like when people with spina bifida have like their conferences and their get-togethers for people with spina bifida, that they realize that like even if you're like not an influencer and you're not famous, because you lived your life with spina bifida and you work and you live your life and do it to the best of your ability, you are an influencer. You don't have to be on TV to be an influencer. As long as you're living a life and doing something that someone behind the lens is looking at and going like, I want to do that, you are an influencer and you are making an impact in somebody's life. I'll give you a quick story. So when I graduated from college, right, I brought my friend with me who has cerebral palsy, and he was struggling with the thought like, do I go to school? Do I not go to school? Just the fact that he saw me graduate and that I had my diploma in my hand was enough for him to go, I'm going to college. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And that's what I mean. Like, you never know who's looking, and you never know who's like watching every step that you make and is drawing inspiration from what you do. Yeah, I think that like you really don't have to have that I'm famous label to be of influence. Every single one of us has that ability. That's my answer to that question. I think that like even though we're not on TV, it's okay, because there will be somebody in your immediate community that is going to make you go, that is freaking cool. I want to do that, like, well, okay, I lied. There is Aaron Fotheringham. Aaron Fotheringham has spina bifida, and, he's competed in Nitro Circus, and he's definitely made a name for himself. So he definitely is one of those people.
I haven't heard of him. What does he do?
He does. He's a.
I mean, I'll Google it, but
yeah, he does. I can't remember the specific name for it, but basically, it's like wheelchair skateboarding. So,
wow.
if you look up Nitro Circus, it's this massive, like extreme sports. I don't even know, like competition. Like they have biking and skateboarding, and like they do all of these massive tricks, and he's one of those people that like he was the first person in a wheelchair to do a backflip on a massive, like really massive skate ramp.
Wow.
So yeah, he is definitely one of those people who is like, he's made a name for himself, and you throw his name out there and you have spina bifida, like 90% of us are going to know who he is, yeah, that guy's crazy. But I mean, I would never do it, but I definitely see him and I go, okay, he's living his best life, so why can't I? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like whatever that definition is for you, just live your best life. Is like, I think that's the point of being an influencer, is like seeing somebody killing it and you being like, I can do that too,
Well, I think I can say that none of us seem to be thrilled with how we're represented in popular media. About a week ago, I was on a Community We Go Health Zoom call, and a woman on the autism spectrum urged all of us on the call to boycott a movie. I wasn't familiar with this, so I Googled it. And the movie is called Music, and Sia, the musical performer, is the director. Apparently, many in the autism community find the yet-to-be-released film offensive, It includes stereotypes, and they're upset that the character is played by an actress who is neurotypical. Of course, I can't comment on any of this since I know few facts, but I invite any filmmaker or writer to include a character with myotonic dystrophy in their next creative work. And I won't mind, if Elizabeth Moss, Amanda Peet, or Kate Blanchett play her, or me.
Thank you for listening to Glass Half Full. Leslie invites you to leave a rating and review on iTunes. This helps spread the word to others dealing with chronic health issues. For show notes, updates, and more, visit the website glasshalffull.online. Glasshalffull.online.